in case people are new here, or in case watching this Q&A back later. My name is Kim. I'm the dietitian behind Nutrition for Real Humans. I started Nutrition for Real Humans because I wanted to help people with the practical side of nutrition. I've spent a lot of time talking to people about, generally what's good to eat, but I realized what I really like to do is help people be like, okay, what are you actually going to eat? What snacks are actually going to work for you? What tricks can we use to make sure this looks realistic for you in your real life? So part of that is meal prep. Something that I do for my clients is often coming to their home and doing meal prep. I also do meal planning, or I help clients learn how to meal prep for themselves. So this is especially relevant. I left the Q&A kind of open because I know meal prep means different things to different people. So I was curious to see what kind of questions I would get. We got a lot of really great questions from people. I know that when I do meal prep, it can look like, for myself, it can sometimes mean pre-cooking things. It can sometimes mean just prepping ingredients. When I do meal prep for clients, I usually just prep ingredients so that they can cook it and have it fresh. And just like everything is measured and chopped and washed, and they can just throw it in their pan or throw it in their crock pot and not have to think about it. But I know sometimes meal prep means prepping lunches for the week or freezing food ahead of time, and we got a lot of different questions regarding a lot of those things. So I am going to jump right into some of the questions that were sent in beforehand. Mindy A. Hart said, any tips on time-effective meal prepping for kids' meals separate to mine? And then she said, actually, do we need meal prep for kids? Maybe I could do mine and make theirs daily. I thought this was a really good question because it goes into like, meal prep can look different for you depending on what's helpful for you. The point of meal prep is that it's supposed to be helpful for you. And so you kind of maybe answered your own question. If you feel like maybe the most helpful thing will be to prep your meals so they're ready to go and you can just be prepping your kids' meals daily, then maybe that's the answer. Especially if you feel like the things that you make for your kids, typically like sandwiches or like snackies or chicken nuggets, don't really need a lot of prep. So because I don't know that, I can't answer that directly, but that would be something I would think about. Maybe it is best to prep your own meals so that you have time to just throw the kids' lunches together, and that way you're making sure you're getting a lunch that works for you. Maybe you do kind of like a combined thing where you prep something that both of you and the kids are going to eat, and then you make the parts that you're going to make separate for them. You can totally meal prep for kids, especially if there's things that they tend to eat a lot. Like if you know that they tend to eat a lot of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, you can make those ahead and you can freeze them actually. If your kids tend to eat a lot of like cooked steamed vegetables like peas or carrots, or I mean, depending on how old your kids are, like you could definitely prep baby food, but you could prep preschool or toddler food as well. If your kids like to eat muffins for breakfast, or if they like to do hot dogs, like you can totally prep those in advance. Not that hot dogs need a lot of prep, but sorry, that's not a super specific answer, but you can totally do meal prep for kids. I would maybe just focus on meal prepping the things that you feel like it would be helpful to prep. Like maybe it's not helpful to prep baby carrots because they're already prepped. But things like sandwiches or I don't know, making up some granola would be helpful. Or maybe it's like, you don't need to prep the kids' meals, you just need to prep your meals so you have time to make the kids' meals. Soulful Sounds asked, I have no idea how people meal prep for the whole week. Does this not need tons of cooking? And the answer to that is like, yeah, it totally can take tons of cooking. Meal prepping for the whole week, depending on how you do it, can take tons of cooking. I know some people make one giant batch of something and then they kind of eat it through the whole week. So in that case, it's not as much cooking, but you have to be willing to eat the same thing the whole week. Some people will try and double use ingredients, which I feel like is a helpful way to do things. So, for example, like they'll make a chicken and then use that for like chicken salad and tacos and soup or something. So they're only like cooking one chicken, but they're kind of doctoring it up in different ways. You can also meal prep without cooking, either because you're making things that don't require cooking, like you can meal prep salads, or you can meal prep wraps, or use a lot of pre-cooked ingredients. Or you can, what I do for my clients is I don't cook anything, or I cook very little. I do a lot of everything except the cooking, basically. So everything except like the heating, because the heating is often what takes a long time, right? Because you have to wait for it to like physically cook. And then cool down so you can store it. And that can take like hours. But a lot of the time, the thing that's a barrier that we're trying to avoid when meal prepping is the time like hands-on part of it. Like the washing, the looking at the recipe, the chopping, the getting out the ingredients, the measuring the ingredients, the dishwashing that you have to do afterward. And so what I will do is I'll come in and like chop all the vegetables, measure out all the spices, put it in like one container, right? And then wash up all the chopping stuff. So that all my clients have to do on the day of is throw it in their pan and saute it, or put it in the oven or put it in the crock pot. So they get a fresh meal. I spend less time at their house, which saves them money. And they still get to do the cooking, right? And have something that's hot and fresh and it's prepped, so they're not having to do all that mental work. And they have to spend the time cooking, but oftentimes that's not active time, so they can like put it on the stove and then go put their feet up, or pack their lunch for tomorrow and spend time with their kids, whatever. So yes, if you cook like 5 or 6 separate dishes for the whole week, yeah, that can take a long time. But there are ways to make it more efficient and choose maybe the parts that you think would be helpful, if that makes sense. A similar question that we got was, I want to meal prep so that I am committed to healthy eating, but I can never motivate myself to do the cooking because it feels like it will take a whole day. Please help. Great question. I'm happy to help as much as I can through this Q&A. So like in the other question, yes, if you cook a bunch of different dishes in one, it can take the whole day. But you can also streamline that so it's not taking the whole day. It sounds like the reason that you want to meal prep, because you feel like that will help you eat healthier, is because it will make it easier to make that choice when you get to dinner time or lunchtime or breakfast time, to have something ready that's easy, that you don't have to do a lot of prep for. But there's also the barrier of like, I have to cook everything on one day. And it's more than just the cooking too, right? When we're talking about meal prepping and like completely preparing everything from start to finish and having it ready in the fridge, that's like a lot of tasks. It's not just the cooking, it's the choosing the recipes, it's making the decisions, it's like thinking about each new recipe, it's doing the actual cooking, it's doing the shopping, it's like coordinating those steps and like remembering to cool everything down and put it in containers and like remember what containers go with what things. It's a lot of different tasks. So yes, that's a lot of things. So if we can break it down, either by trying to combine ingredients, that like helps with the practical side. It could also be maybe you need to spread out your barriers or like change where they are. So instead of just being like, I need to get over this one barrier on one day in the week, I need to make everything, or every meal I need to make something, you can kind of break it up. I feel like I'm not explaining that super well, but maybe thinking about like when you get home and you're like, I don't want to make dinner. What is the thing that's like sticking in your brain? Is it that you don't want to decide what to make for dinner? Is it that maybe that's not a problem. You know what you should make, what you want to make. You're excited about the food, but you hate touching raw meat. You hate chopping up things. You don't like having to get all the ingredients out and make a mess. So maybe figuring out if there's a couple of those steps that you can do in the prep, right? And kind of split those tasks up. So on your prep day, instead of cooking everything from start to finish, you're deciding what you're going to make and like organizing it in the fridge, kind of like they do when they send you like HelloFresh bags. They put like each meal in a bag. Maybe that just like mentally having like your little kit ready will be helpful. Maybe it's that you hate like washing all the vegetables and like getting your hands wet and like having to wash the cutting board, chop up the onions. So maybe on your prep day, you just chop up all your veggies, or you can buy pre-cooked veggies if that's within your budget, and that's available to you. Or you don't like dealing with raw meat, so maybe on your prep day, you just cook all your meat, right? Or you just like take it out of the packaging and marinate it, so that it's like just ready to cook on that day. You can also, again, choose things that don't require as much work to prep. It is, as long as it fits within your budget, and fits with your other goals, there are lots of great convenience foods we can buy that have a lot of the prep done for us. So buying salad kits, that can be a form of meal prep, or buying pre-marinated meat, or buying frozen meat that's like ready to go that you just have to warm up. I mean, obviously, like maybe you're like, that has a weird, gross texture, I don't like it. So maybe that's not a great solution. But looking for convenience things that you can just use so that your meal is already prepped for you could be a solution. This is another thing maybe, that instead of trying to prep all your meals for the week, you start with the goal of trying to prep like 2 meals per week. That can bring down the barrier on your prep day, but also means you're eating a healthier meal 2 days of the week. It is okay to make your goal smaller and start with a small goal, and that's still committing to healthy eating. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It has to be realistic, right? If it's not something that's realistic and you will do, it doesn't help you. So even if it's not where you want to ultimately be, it is okay to start with a small goal. I also do this. So if you're interested in working with me, if that's something that sounds good, I can help you with like, especially the mental of meal prepping. So helping you choose recipes that sound good to you, that go with your food goals, that will be good for meal prepping. So helping with the recipe selection, helping with assembling the grocery list, helping with something that I have done for clients, is giving them a guide for like, this is how you can efficiently prep all these meals for the week, like within a certain amount of time. Because I've thought of all the steps, I've put them in an efficient order, so you just have to like follow the instructions. And like done all that combining of like, use this ingredient for this and also for this. And oftentimes when I work with clients to do that, I do that for a few weeks, like 2 to 4 weeks. And by the end of those 2 to 4 weeks, they're ready to go on their own, because not only do they have a toolkit of recipes that they like, because they have the guide of what to do, they've practiced doing it. And so like the physical skill of doing it is familiar. And they have like, they could just continue to prep those 2 to 4 weeks through a cycle if they wanted. But because they have a base to start with, they also have like a little bit more mental energy to be like, I'm going to try this new recipe, because they're not trying to adapt all those skills at once. So this is like what I love to do for clients, is help them with the meal prep, just giving them like a head start, so that they can commit to healthy eating. Like, I'm not doing your job for you completely, but I'm taking on a bunch of those skills at first so you can gradually take them. If that's something that you're interested in, feel free to contact me on any of my social media or my website, nutritionforrealhumans.com. If not, that's okay too. Another great resource is If you Google lazy genius meal prep, I refer to her a lot, but she has a lot of great practical tips that are not like, this is how I meal prep. It's like, it is how she meal preps, but it's a lot of like very practical, small things you can do to make meal prep easy. So Google lazy genius meal prep, you'll get some ideas. Maybe one or two will be like, oh. All right. The short answer for both of those last two questions, consider that meal prep doesn't have to be from start to finish. It can be just doing small parts of your meal preparation to make your life easier later. Figure out what things would be helpful to have done already and get those things done. Or ask for some help, or pay for some help with me, or pay for the grocery store to do it for you. The next question I have is, I tried meal prepping a few years ago, but I only enjoyed the food on the first 2 days. What meals taste nice after being saved? What meals taste nice after being saved for a few days? This is a great question. So it sounds like the style of meal prepping that you were doing a few years ago was make one meal for the whole week and eat it the whole week, which is totally valid way to do meal prep. So there's two things could be going on here. One is like the food deteriorated or didn't taste as nice for those following days. Two, it could be you also just got bored. So that's something to consider is, personally, do you think you would be okay with eating the same thing as long as it continued to taste nice, or do you need to build some more variety into your meal plan? For the first question, what foods taste nice after being saved for a few days? Practically, I think foods that tend to have a lot of spices and a lot of flavors that can meld as they're stored in the fridge are the most helpful. Something like a soup, or a chili, or a hearty salad, like not a lettuce salad, obviously, but like a or a bean or a lentil salad that as it marinates in the dressing with all the different ingredients, it will, like, the flavors will be enhanced. My husband often makes fun of me because I will say like, oh man, this chili is so much better as leftovers, or this lasagna is so much better as leftovers. And some foods are like that. So choosing something that has lots of good flavors that will continue to meld and marinate would be one tip. The second thing is, if you're doing meat, choosing something that has a sauce, because meat or chicken cooked just by itself, like if you're doing meat, starch, vegetables, like kind of that classic style of meal prep, the meat can start to get like more dry over the next few days. So choosing to do something in a format that has a sauce, like it's cooked in a sauce or it's mixed into a dressing, can help prevent that like dried outness. And that's another reason that soups and like stews are good, but it could also be that like you serve it with a sauce. So you have your chicken and then you have like a ranch dressing or a salsa or something to help address the dryness. So that would be my best tip in general. And of course, I can't tell you what you personally will like continue to like the taste of after 1 or 2 days. I know for me, I really like pasta and I really like beans. So things that are like with those two things, I'm like, yeah, I'm happy to eat that for the whole week. Things that are more meat focused after a few days, it kind of grosses me out. That's just me personally, and probably why I'm like, yeah, I do a salad instead of like chicken and vegetables and rice. But maybe it's the opposite for you. So you may have to try out a few things. The second thing is, if you just find you get bored after the first few days, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Try and use those same ingredients, but vary up a little bit. So that could just be like, maybe you do chicken and vegetables and rice, but you do like a couple different sauces. So one day you do like cilantro cream avocado ranch. I know a lot of people aren't into cilantro, but that's what came to mind. Another day you do a salsa. Another day you do like or maybe like the first day you just do plain because it's like fresh, and then you add different sauces throughout the week. It could be that you do chicken and roast vegetables, but one day you have it with rice, one day you have it with pasta, one day you have it with potatoes, one day you put it on top of a salad with a dressing. So it's basically the same ingredients. You're only prepping one meal, but you're doing a bunch of different meals, right? Or you just alternate too. Those would be my best tips. So figure lots of flavors, lots more dressings and sauces. And if you can, kind of shuffle the same ingredients with just like maybe a different starch or a different vegetable, or a different sauce. The next question that I have is, my friend freezes her cooked meals when she meal preps, but this seems strange to me. Is this normal? As I think it would be great for time saving, but it freaks me out a bit. I'm gonna take a water break. Momentito, please. So the first part of the question, is this normal? As I think it would be great for time saving. I would say yes, it's normal. And yes, it is great for time saving, because then you have meals in the freezer. And this can also be a great solution to feeling like you have to cook a ton, or you're stuck on variety, because you can make a large batch and freeze half of it, and then you have meal prep for a future week. So you're like, you've already done the cooking, but you have variety, right? So yes, it is great for time saving. It is normal. I'm not sure why it freaks you out a bit. I'm going to assume because of food safety. Like, you're not sure if, like, is it okay to cook food and freeze it and have it for later? The short answer is yes. As long as you pay attention to your temperatures, when you're cooking, when you're cooling it down to freeze it, when you're heating it back up after freezing. The key thing that you want to pay attention to is what we call the danger zone in temperature. And that's the temperatures between 40 and 140 Fahrenheit. And I don't know what that is in Celsius. I'm sorry. Those are great temperatures for bacteria to grow, right? We don't cook our food in a sterile environment, so there's bacterial contamination on any of our food, right? And a lot of it is harmless, but we don't want to take the chance that there's harmful bacteria and allow it to grow. So we do our best to just minimize growth by controlling the cooking temperatures. So when you're cooking food, right, you heat it up, right, obviously to cook it past 140. You want to not let it be in that like 40 to 140 for very long. So when you take out food out of the fridge, like, you want to keep it cool for as long as possible until you're ready to cook it. You want to get it up to that cooking temperature, which is usually much greater than 140 anyway. You want to cook it long enough that it's going to kill bacteria that are there. And then you want to, if you're cooling it down, either to put in the fridge or to put in the freezer, you want to cool it down back to that below 40 fairly quickly as well. In total, you want that food to spend less than 4 hours in the danger zone. So that's while you're cooking it, while it's waiting to be cooked, while it's being cooled down, while it's being defrosted, when you're eating it later. So you just want to minimize that amount of time. Practically, this means when you're preparing food, try and keep it cold in the fridge till you're ready to use it. If you're prepping food in advance, to cook later, like I do, prep food, put it in the fridge, keep it in the fridge till it's ready to cook. If you are cooking food in advance, you want to cook it thoroughly. Use your meat thermometer to check the temperatures of your meat and make sure it's getting fully cooked. If you just Google meat temperatures, it's different for each type of meat. But you want to make sure that that's fully cooked. You want to make sure your grains and your veggies are fully cooked too. The risk for those growing bacteria is less, but it's still there. And then once it's cooked, you want to cool it down fairly quickly. So if you're making a large batch of something like soup or casserole, putting it in multiple containers quickly, or putting it in a big shallow pot instead of a big tall pot so that it's exposed to the air, stirring it so that it gets exposed to the air, the stuff on the bottom doesn't stay hot. If you live somewhere where it's really cold outside, I have done this, you can put your pot of soup out in the snow or out in the cold air. You want to make sure that it's like actually cold, like not like, oh, it's a little chilly. Like if the temperature is less than a fridge would be, like it's less than 40 outside or it's freezing outside, use nature's refrigerator. You want to avoid putting your hot food directly in the fridge or the freezer because home freezers are not powerful enough to cool them quickly. And so not only will it not cool down fast enough in the fridge, it will also heat up the rest of your fridge and possibly cause that food to become unsafe. So in this case, taking your hot food and putting it in like little containers and having it sit on the counter will help it cool off faster. And then once it's like room temperature, you can put it in the fridge or the freezer. So that is the tip for when you are prepping the food. You just want to cool it down, like heat it up completely, cook it completely, and then cool it down as quickly as possible. You can also buy fancy ice wands, which are like basically a fancy water bottle that you put in the freezer and then you stir your food with it, and that helps cool it down. You can also put ice cubes in it or whatever, but usually spreading it into smaller containers is the best solution. Then when you are ready to eat food, the best case is to defrost it in the fridge because a fridge ideally is going to be below that 40 degrees. So as it defrosts, it's never going to get above that unsafe temperature. Versus thawing it on the counter, where the outside might start to thaw and the inside is still cold, but the outside gets to like that danger zone, is sitting there, bacteria is growing. You don't want that. Obviously, I realize sometimes like you forget and you're like, oh shoot, I need to defrost this. In that case, you want to defrost it fast. So using a microwave, or if you can get it out of the container and just like heating it directly on the stove so it just goes from cold to hot really fast, is ideal. You don't want it to defrost slowly in the danger zone where it can be growing bacteria. Excuse me, I've obviously been talking too long. One moment. Practically, and when you are heating it up again, you want to heat it up to above that 140, just in case to kill any bacteria that might be growing in it. Practically, as far as freezing stuff, there's some foods that don't freeze well. Like obviously you don't want to freeze a green salad, the lettuce will get all wilty. Potatoes tend to be weird to freeze because their texture changes. But as long as you are paying attention to the temperatures, your food will be safe. It just may not have the same texture. Soups are really good for freezing. Rice is pretty good for freezing. And if you have questions about how to freeze food, just Google how to freeze blah, blah, blah. And you'll come up with a bunch of tips. If you are freezing, just for ease of defrosting, I learned this late, recently with a client I did a bunch of like pre-baby meal prep for, is if you can and you have the freezer space, freeze stuff flat. So don't like take a Ziploc bag of something and like freeze it so it's all squashy, because it takes longer to defrost. Freeze it flat so that it has lots of surface area and it's easier to defrost. If you're freezing like individual chopped vegetables or meatballs, freeze them on a plate or a sheet pan first if you have the space, so that they don't all stick together in one clump. Once they're frozen, then you can absolutely consolidate them, but like freeze them separately first. So yes, great time saver, freezing meals. There's some safety considerations as far as temperatures, but it is safe. And can be really useful. I'm doing a lot of freezer meal prep right now. That's what all my promo images were soup, cookie dough. I just did a lasagna. So yes, it is a great time saver. I would Google individual foods like, does blah, blah, blah freeze well? And you'll get a really good answer to know whether it's going to be good as far as like texture and taste. Let's see. I also have, how do you meal prep for a household that all eat different things? Daughter and husband don't like fish, and my son is vegetarian. This is a great question and a real good real life example, because we don't always all get to eat the same meal together. If I was meal prepping for this family, for your family, I would probably do a lot of individual meal prep, or a lot more ingredient prep. I would probably try and do a lot of common side dishes. So it sounds like a lot of the things would be having to do with the protein of the meal. If some people don't like fish, some people are vegetarian. But you could probably share a lot of the same side dishes or vegetable dishes. So I would probably do a lot of common meal prepping of like, I'm going to make a rice dish for us to have with our different proteins. And then maybe just like make the the fish and the chicken on that day. Or I would make a side dish that has enough protein to be a meal, like a hearty meal in itself, like that has beans, or quinoa or lentils. I don't know what your son's preferred vegetarian proteins are. Maybe he uses like meat substitutes, which are usually pretty easy to prep themselves. But maybe he would just choose to eat a more protein-rich side dish that the family can eat as well, but they're eating alongside their chicken. And then everybody shares a common salad. So I would try and find the common ground of what everyone can share, and do meal prep for that. And I may end up doing a lot more ingredient meal prep. So chopping onions ahead of time, making dressings, making spice blends that can be used on fish or chicken or tofu, so that that part of the meal is taken care of, and the only thing that has to be done is like the actual cooking. I might also do, I would probably, if possible, involve family members in meal prep. So having them prep the things that are individual to them, so it's less work for you, if possible, and maybe having their input on, or if like it's different flavors that people like, and it's not just like we need to vary the protein. It might be like, okay, you get to choose the flavor for this day, you choose the flavor for this day, so that it's not 3 different meals every day. It's maybe like you get to choose the flavor you like this day, and we'll rotate through. I think in this case of meal prepping for a household that all eats different things, it would be finding the common ground and probably doing mostly ingredient prep. That's what I would probably end up doing. Right, well, I'm pretty much ready to wrap up thank you all for sending in your great questions. I think if I were to send key takeaways, it would be consider that meal prep doesn't have to be cooked from start to finish. It can be food prep or prepping the parts that are difficult. You can figure out a way to meal prep that fits your needs. Try and do a lot of double duty with the same ingredients. Take advantage of the convenience foods that you have available to you, because that can count as meal prep as well. Watch out for your temperatures when you're doing meal prep, whether it's for the fridge or the freezer. Keep things out of that 40 to 140 as much as possible. And if you want somebody to do some of the thinking for you, feel free to contact me. That's what I do. And I love doing it with people and giving them a head start so that they can be committed to healthy eating, as one of you said. All right, well, I look forward to the next Q&A, and take care and have a good day.